Welcome to What's on Your Radar, the 30-minute fast-paced live stream that shares senior cybersecurity professional insights on topics that are intriguing to us. My name is Gerald Dozier. Let me bring in my man, Eric Taylor. We are broadcasting from Simply Cyber, the YouTube channel designed to help you make and take a cybersecurity career further, faster. At the moment, I'm joined by my good friend Eric Taylor, and perhaps a third guest will be joining us. We had a little bit of a scheduling conflict. If you're looking to get in the field or already practicing in the field, I guarantee you there will be value delivered to you here today. Get active in chat. We'd love to hear your thoughts on all these matters. Now let's get into the stream and find out what's on everyone's radar. Hey Eric, how you doing?
What's going on, buddy? You doing all right?
Yeah, I'm good. I just came hot off the ThreatGen's deep dive stream. We were talking about this UK capability on a national centered service on handling phishing submissions. Which maybe if we don't get our third guest, we can spend a few minutes talking about your thoughts on that. But we do like to keep on schedule and keep on track to deliver the promise to the community that we have. So, Eric, let's start with you, man. What's on your radar?
Man, this one is got like 110% of my attention right now because it is so new. It's so unique in the way that this thing is being delivered. So, Mandiant put out a warning or an advisory about a group called UNC 3524. Now, yeah, probably an ATP, but Mandiant has not tied this to a typical ATP number or a character of like Fuzzy Bear or Walking Panda or
Mm-hmm.
Crouching Spider or whatever they want to come up with next week. Um, so this one is really unique. So they are literally attacking IoT devices. Surprise, surprise! But apparently they have figured out a way to e- uh, exploit what's called BusyBox, which is like an open source, like web RTC kind of, and you put that as an SSH client,
Yeah,
and they
I've
figured.
played with BusyBox. It's almost always found on IoT devices. It's like a
Mhm.
stripped out Linux system. I mean, it's not a Linux system. It's like Linux executables that you would want mostly really pared down on IoT devices.
Exactly. So it's a real
Yep.
lightweight SSH, and especially if you don't have a mainstream Linux distro, a lot of times they'll incorporate this into their distro. Um, so they found a way to essentially take over and create persistence on this thing. So all it would do was sit there and enumerate the network, it would do a network scan, find all the assets that are on the network, and it would beacon out every so often, much like a lot of IT folks would have, network monitoring tools that are inside of your network that would scan your network about once an hour or once every 3 hours, look for new assets, try to assess them and everything like that. But they mess me up. I'm like,
Yeah, let me know.
sorry.
I
No, it's
like
good, man.
I'm just introducing music since it's just the two of us and a couple close friends from the community. I thought I might spice it up a little bit and see how the music is received by the community.
There we go. There we go. Yeah, I already made you laugh coming into this thing because I was sitting here doing my Fat Man Happy Dance intro. But anyway, so it would enumerate that and it would start scanning your network, right? Um, from there, they would actually look at the network traffic to find the what's called the golden SAML tickets that was going to 365 tenants or exchange servers to start tracking and enumerating that traffic and start taking over Microsoft 365 tenants. And then there you have the kingdom because a lot of companies nowadays are building, that hybrid network of
Mm-hmm.
of Azure and on premise. So if you're running 365 with Azure AD Connect running, you would have that local infrastructure. So you could be able to push scripts, you could push policies to the local workstations and the local servers via Intune or Endpoint Manager now, and be able to start really doing whatever you want to, data exfiltration or whatever, under the masks of Microsoft 365. So being able to like, okay, why is Azure sending a bunch of data to Dropbox or box.com or whatever? So
Yep.
it really causes and from an IR and a complete DFIR aspect, it really causes a lot of problems trying to figure that thing out. So it's very very clever. It's very
Mhm.
unique, and it's going to be hard as hell to track. So
Well,
that's what's on my radar is trying to figure that one out.
well, let me ask you this as I bring in our third guest here. We've got pinch hitters all over the place. What was the name of the threat actor that they had given it the
It's
designation?
UNC 34 or 3524 uniform Nancy Charlie.
Unified three. Hold on. Unified. Yeah. So the UNC, right?
Yep, Unc
UNC
35
35.
3524.
Yeah. So it's interesting. FireEye, which is Mandiant, right? They're
Mhm.
kind of one and the same. They use because I've been a FireEye client in the past. They use different designations. So the UNC designation is like unknown classified, and
Yep.
then I think it's TA is threat actor, but
Mm.
they haven't moved it to an APT yet because they're not sure if it's a splinter of another an existing APT or if it's own. They need to get more information in order to do that. So I've pulled up the Mandiant report on this. I can share this as a screen. Jack Scott, I sent you a email with the link to it. So jump in here when you're ready. Yeah. So this is what they're talking about. Now, let me ask you this, Eric. What what was it about the busy box that mattered into this? So is that their initial
Yep.
attack vector is penetrating busy box, and then
Correct.
as a pivot they go out from there?
Yes, correct. So if you scroll down to initial compromise and maintain presence there, right,
Yes.
the next thing right here. So you'll see as it gets in there, they'll start talking about busy using drop bear and busy box in there. So
Yep.
it, like I said, it's very very clever. And the reason they can't tie it to another ATP or a TA is because these are brand new TTPs that are being leveraged, right? So you don't have anybody else doing this. You don't have anybody to tie it to. So it's very very unique.
Yeah, and one of the other things that I find interesting, and this is part of the reason why IoT devices, so IoT devices get crapped on all the time because like they don't, they're not very big, they don't have a lot of memory, they can't be properly secured, I can't put stuff on it, which is true. But at the same time, a lot of things that people forget or whatever is that you can't really install anything on it either. It's not that it's just a small little footprint stupid device. You can't really get, there's no logs, you can't get logs pushed to some type of centralized logging source. You
Hmm.
can't obviously install an EDR on it. So when an IoT device with a busy box, for example, gets popped, it just gets popped. It never really registers to anyone. And in my opinion, Eric, you're the SecOps guy. The only time you find a compromised IoT device is when you see network traffic coming from it that doesn't make sense. That's
Yep.
the indicator of compromise, not the endpoint or the host itself.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times we call it beaconing in our industry. So it's making unusual beacons, unusual requests to servers and devices that it shouldn't be. Like if a lot of them have UPnP enabled, so they'll try to see what other devices they can link to. But we're
Mhm.
starting to see a lot of, this IoT device is communicating under port 22, port 9100, aka printing ports, various type of uh, different type of traffic that's not typical of an IoT device or any sort of device like that. It starts raising a lot of red flags. Trying to figure out that whole beaconing process is like, this should really be only web traffic. You should only see ports 8443 on that thing. Every once in a while, some of those IoT devices do have some other weird ports that they do communicate on, but it's pretty typical for whatever manufacturer it is, right? So, um,
Exactly. And then the other fact that Eric mentioned that's very damaging is that, and unfortunately the threat actors figured this out, is that they'll get into an Azure tenant and then start attacking out from there. And it looks like when you look at the logs, and if you're a junior analyst, you may do this mistakenly. When you look at the logs and you see that it's Azure is the source of the data traffic, you just assume it's it's actual real network traffic from your enterprise, or it's like it's updates coming from you know some service, right? Like, because if you guys have ever turned on Wireshark and looked at the traffic coming out of just your host, you could
Oh
have all
boy.
your apps closed. There's a ton of stuff going on. So it's easy to assume, well, it's Azure, it's safe, or it's Google, it's safe. And unfortunately, threat actors are hiding in plain sight on those platforms, and it sucks.
Yeah, I mean, even with that, if you go, there's one part in that article that I showed you, but it's a little bit down further, but they actually use a technique called time stomping. And for those who don't know what time stomping is, let me explain this out. So time stomping is falsifying the actual read and or last write time on a file to manipulate it to look like it may be older than what it really is. So something that is done a lot of times, especially Windows devices are very, very bad for this. You could take a file, let's say a text file or something like that, and put it somewhere, leave it alone for 30 days. If you delete it and recreate that file exactly, typically within 45 seconds, it will keep the same timestamps as the original file. And that's a
I
lot of
didn't
times
know
how a
that.
lot of time stomping happens.
Dude, I
Props
had
to
no
my
idea
science
about that.
teacher who showed me that mess. That was a mind-boggling one there. But anyway,
Yeah, so it's 45 seconds. Like, is that
yeah,
is that time? Wow. So
yeah.
that's
There's,
interesting.
I think Windows 11 expands it out to 60 seconds on some of the versions. But yeah, I mean, if you get it done typically with underneath a minute, you can keep it. So try it. Create a file on your desktop today, and next time you get ready to do What's Your Radar, get ready to create a new text file. Don't save it yet. Delete it off your desktop, delete it from your recycle bin, and hurry up and save it from Notepad, and it'll keep the same timestamp on there.
And it's got to be the same file name and stuff.
Yeah, it's
That's
got to
so
be same
weird
file.
because everything about that hash should be different. Whatever.
Oh, the hash and everything else is the same, but for some reason, Windows will see it and be like, "Oh yeah, we still know about this file. It was this, this, and this, and this," and
Dude,
yeah, it'll keep
that's
it.
like one of those features that no one asked for, or like some one person asked for, and like whatever.
Yeah, you got to ask like, who was smoking crack that day to come up with this nice bug?
Yeah, exactly. So let's bring on. Oh, never mind. She's actually stepped away. So let me share what's on my radar. If
Yes,
I may.
sir.
Oh, she's kind of back here. We'll
Is she back? Is
introduce
she back?
our third guest in a second. But I want to show you what's on my radar. And if you guys have been fans of Simply Cyber live streams, or you've been stalking me online, yesterday I went and did a kind of a renegade broadcast on the Simply Cyber brand channel on LinkedIn in order to be able to do LinkedIn live streaming from there going forward. And I did it all on my favorite thing, your favorite thing, the 800-161. I know, basically, Eric, this is what you've been dreaming about all weekend to read. Here, we're bringing in my girl, Jax. Hold on. So our third guest, I love how you sighed just looking at the title page of this, Eric. Let's bring in our third senior expert guest, the one and only Ms. Jax Scott. Hey, Jax, how are you?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
You sound great.
All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank
you
for
should have
joining
seen
us for-
my hot mess of I have literally 3 laptops right here, all in this area, and they're all for different things. So I'm excited to be here. And we're talking about NIST. So I love NIST. That's my
I was about to
shirt.
say,
Absolutely.
you don't want to see what's on my desk just over here. It's a big mess too, so don't feel bad.
I was
That's
like, yeah,
awesome.
why not? Jump in on it. And I love that you pulled this up right before, because this just came out, or didn't it just get revisioned?
Nope. Well, it is R1, but I think that the revisions, I didn't do a delta between R0 and R1, but there is a substantial increase. This was published in May of 22, so I mean in the last 13 days. It's 326 pages long. Your boys read it all, and I've got, classic nerd highlighting going on. There's footnotes in here. I printed it out 4 pages per to save a tree. Here's what you guys need to know about this. First order of business, cybersecurity supply chain risk is a real thing. I wish they had called it just supply chain risk, because all of the guidance in this document maps literally one-to-one with the NIST 839, which is like the enterprise risk management framework. So if you picture a triangle, it's got the enterprise level at the top, and then the mission and business in the middle, and then the information system at the bottom. Most of us, at least all of us on this stream, live at the information system level. We are hands-on, we're securing systems, we're protecting systems. Even if it's a business, which is at the second level, we are still executing the processes that we do at the information system level. So by calling this cybersecurity supply chain risk management, I think that the authors have made a slight mistake in already telling executives that this is a nerd thing and not their thing. And that, and like they'll deal with it after it gets through the CISO, through the CIO, and maybe to them. So I feel like that's one shortcoming, but by and large, this document is fantastic. It tells you how to It tells you how to operationalize supply chain risk management at your organization. And one of the best things I love about it, and I did talk trash about it. I'll tell you one good thing and then one bad thing about it, and then I'll open it to the community. One of the best things that they did here was right here, section 3.4. Well, I know it's a little hard to read. Oops. The section 3.4, the cybersecurity supply chain risk management key practices. When you go into this section, right, they have it set up in a maturity level. So they have it set up in a maturity level. So like literally you should do these things first and build on top. Then when you're doing that and you got those in place, these things can take that and make them better. And then this is how you like take it and just turn it to 11. So they actually make it in a way that is, run or crawl, walk, run, which I love. Now, here's the one hit on cyber supply chain risk management. You see how it says establish a core dedicated multidisciplinary program management office and team. This is going to require significant investment, significant cultural transformation. You're going to need people who are dedicated to it. And it's not wrong to have people dedicated on supply chain risk. It really is a risk. But like, dude, senior management can say to the blue in the face, cybersecurity and your privacy is a great importance to us here at the organization. And then you're like, okay, that's great. I need you to commit like 3 new FTEs to this project, and I need a budget of $1 million. And they're like, well, it's not that much of a priority to us at this organization, right? So when the rubber hits the road, you get smacked in the face. And that is, for better or worse, that is a real challenge with implementing this practice in reality, because it's going to have significant cultural and financial hurdles in order to actually be achieved in any way that's meaningfully effective. Now I'll open it up to the panel. Jax, you want to start since you're coming in off the bench and you're hot, you're like ready to roll?
And ladies first, come on.
All I've been doing lately is all NIST 39. So what I really like about this framework, and I dove into it a little bit in school, was how I felt that it was really focusing on the SDLC, which was the system development life cycle, which in my opinion, some of the frameworks that my knowledge base has really dove into, a lot of them aren't focusing on the life cycle, which I found that was one of the, if you actually put in SDLC, it's listed 97 times. So they really lay heavy on the life cycle. I think that's really a critical component, because it is the systems that make up that supply chain. And so we're looking, and another thing that this document covers is it actually looks at ERM, because it doesn't just look at 39 at the system level, but I felt like this document did a fairly good job at bringing in a holistic approach to the supply chain. So I think it's going to have another revision in the very, very near term, probably before the end of this year, because I think we're going to get a lot more comments and people are going to start providing more feedback on this current revision. So that's what I've got. How about you, Eric?
So a lot of times when we see a lot of these publications going on, I'll have to ask you, is this revision one final? Like all the comments and everything have been submitted and it's completely finalized, or is it still going through that process?
No, as far as I know, it is published. Although I did find
awesome.
3 typos when I read it, but I'm not going to crap on them for typos.
Well, I haven't read it, but I will go off of what Jack said. I'm really, really happy to hear that they are putting end of life on hardware. They're doing life cycle changes because, you and I have talked privately, and I think a little bit openly, but there's a lot of manufacturing firms that are in this thing where they will leave their 30-year-old manufacturing equipment because it still runs. And
Yep.
why am I going to replace it if it still runs? I'm not going to spend $50,000 for a new doodad to make the same gadget when the same doodad still works. So I do like that they're starting to integrate that. Have
Yeah.
you seen where they're actually going to apply this NIST framework to like a manufacturing, industry, or are there any? Is this open for anybody who wants to adopt it, or are they going to mandate certain industries for adoption?
That's a good question. What I foresee happening is this being something that's going to be integrated with the CMMC, because CMMC is focused on the supply chain, and outside of just 171 and 172, looking at CUI data, they didn't until this came out, they didn't really have a framework on securing that supply chain. So I think this is going to be that next step to that CMMC to secure the defense industrial base and our supply chain infrastructure in the federal space.
So do you think, because I was massive into CMMC before, I'm just going to be honest, before they butchered the crap out of it and made it 800 171, I thought CMMC 1.0, I will call, it was a really, really good framework. We were doing self-attestation. We were getting ready to do all that. So do you think, because it's CMMC, right, 2.0, if you will, has the 3 layers, do you think they will make, like, say, AKA tier 4 with this NIST framework, or do you think they're going to incorporate it into the original 3 layers that they already have?
I don't think they'll create a 4th because of how it's designed, because 2 and 3, 2 is, you've got that split of either attestation or self-attestation by a third party or by yourself. And then 3rd is if you're like a big company like a Deloitte or something like that.
You're a prime. Yeah,
if you're a prime on something. And that's a great way of looking at it. If you're a prime or if you're a subcontractor, probably going to fall into level 2. So it wouldn't make sense to put a level 4 because that would be a superpower, at least how they have the pyramid, the scale. What I foresee happening, I don't think they're going to make another revision probably within CMMC because there's so much, there's so many issues right now just getting the DFARS and FARS out just for this new 2.0 revision and trying to get that rolled out. I think what could happen in the future is in the next year or so, we could just see more policies around implementing this as another layered effect into the CMMC. Like you have the CMMC, but now it's like compliance. So now you've got different types of compliance depending on the kind of data that you have. Well, now you're going to have a compliance for supply chain, and you're going to have, you've got your credit card compliance, and you've got your CMMC, and now you have supply chain compliance is what I'm thinking.
Gotcha.
I just saw that message, yeah.
One other thing to share before we go on to Jax's radar item, and Eric, check out private chat. Okay, cool. So one other thing that's really, really cool, and I was like super pumped about this, is I was going to talk about that graphic, and instead I want to tell you about this other thing that I'm super pumped about. So one of the brilliant things that they did in here, and I haven't seen this in any other NIST documentation. So 800-171 is supposed to be in CMMC, is supposed to be these controls that if you work with the federal government that you need to adhere to. And it's always been like one step away or one degree away from the federal government, right? Now check this out. This is a brilliant thing. As soon as I get to the stupid graphic, here it is. So this is in the appendix, they have the 853 controls that all map up into how you can comply with the cybersecurity or how you can implement supply chain risk management using NIST 853 controls. Check this out. These are the controls that you're supposed to use, right? And they have 3 different levels of maturity, and I showed those earlier, right? So this is your foundational, your sustaining, your enhanced. These flow down controls, this right here is awesome. The premise of this is these are controls that you should require of your subs. So if you're a big enough, player and you have subs underneath you, the subs can't hide what they're doing from the supply chain. You can't be 1 degree behind on the supply chain and have like risk coming up the supply chain. So they've included this flow down, which I think is awesome. And you can see it's not just a one-to-one with the baseline controls. It's literally, this is what you need of your subs, and it's on the subs to meet it. And if they can't, well, then, they don't win the contract theoretically. So I think that this is a brilliant move and can certainly help empower procurement and acquisition offices in order to understand what they need to be asking when they're talking about partnering on contracts with subs.
Gotcha.
So that's my big flip out on.
So what do you guys think though? So let me ask this, let me pose this question, because, we're talking about the defense industrial base, and there's a lot of control there by the federal government. They can really force the hands of those organizations that work in that space by implementing certain policies, certain legislation, and that's what we're seeing. But what about the commercial sector? How are we going to secure this commercial side? And this is something I think about, even though I still work in the federal space. How do we secure those individuals? How is that going to look? Or is this just going to be a cascading effect of the federal system becoming more secure, and eventually for organizations to work even like second and third vendors down, you're going to have to be compliant because somebody somehow down the line works in that federal space? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know if it's actually going to go that far. As much as I would love to have one standard, U.S. based baseline cybersecurity policy, if you will. I just don't think it's going to ever happen. I know you got the insurance companies who are on their renewals. They're trying to do their own little spin and flavor. They're kind of missing the mark greatly. It's like, does all of your network gear have MFA? No, a lot of your switches can't support MFA, right? So, but anyway, I really do think I'm talking to a lot of insurance companies and really, really pushing it. It's like, look, CIS version 8, I believe personally, is a great entry point. It gets them introduced to cybersecurity, it gets them introduced to a framework. It's not, you still have a little bit pain to get to it, but it's not overbearing like a CMMC, a NIST framework, or anything like that, ISO for 900, whatever.
It's security framework training wheels, and it's better than nothing.
Exactly. So I wish a lot of people would actually start implementing at least that type of framework for all their. You want to get an insurance policy, you got to adhere to this framework, and I think that should be easily done, easily achievable. You just got to get these insurance companies and these other people who are mandating certain policies to start adopting that and saying, I think once we have probably like say 10-15% market share of folks who are actually adopting the CIS, then you'll start seeing a more domino effect of more and more companies starting to require it and mandate it. But that's my 2 cents.
Well, and the last thing I'll say about this, just to kind of throw like run up and throw like a wrench as hard as I can at your wheels. And then Jax, I want to know what's on your radar. This is all fine and good, but we're framing this as businesses doing business with businesses, right? To say business a bunch of times. What about when you grab a piece of open source software that's like a volunteer developer did it, or like some community of developers have done it? NPM, Log4j, like Apache, right? Like all of this crap, people I know we like to think that software developers in 2022 are like, grinding and writing code and stuff, but they're all going to Stack Exchange. They're all copying and pasting, right?
GitHub.
GitHub. So explain to me how you're going to flow down these controls that we just talked about to an open source software repository. No one's even going to reply to you, let alone acknowledge you. So this is going to be, like I said, this is a great start, and it moves the security further down the road as far as being mainstream and adopted and like at the board kind of discussions. But there are challenges that are going to be very difficult to solve. So
take that one step further before we go to Jack. Sorry, just to interject on that. But a lot of times we see, especially in our penetration testing services that we do, that certain companies will use they will knowingly take a outdated version of something they got on GitHub or whatever, because the latest version doesn't work. It breaks something in their current other code that they stole from some other GitHub repo. So they got to use an outdated version that's got maybe security holes or feature issues or whatever. So, and then they don't ever update it. Like we found one that had a vulnerability on it. They knowingly took a version 3, minor version revisions earlier, and they've had 13 revisions since they published that code, and they still won't update it. I'm like, you guys are just asking for trouble. So yeah, it opens up a whole massive Pandora's box, to your point.
I love it. I love it. I'm looking for a meme that I see all the time that is absolutely hilarious. I'll see if I can find it
Dumpster
later.
fire. I love
Yeah.
dumpster fires.
Well, I was thinking more about the car that has the chandeliers on the front of it, and it basically
Oh.
says like, open source software, or like the commercial product where it's just composed of a bunch of different crap. But Ms. Scott, why don't you share with us and the community here what is on your radar?
So we're talking about NIST, and I'm a big
Mhm.
fan of it, and something I'm really passionate about. And I wanted to do this actually on another episode and be all about NIST 8286 and talk about ERM, but this sounds perfect because we were already just talking about supply chain. So I think it's a great segue. What I want to talk about is talking about NIST 8286, which is the Enterprise Risk Management Framework. I don't know if you can pull that up over on your end, Gerald.
I've got it coming in hot. NIST 8286.
8286, yeah. So this has been around for a couple of years, but the concept of enterprise risk management has been around for quite a long time. I would probably surmise to say probably a decade or longer. So the overall concept of it and what enterprise risk management is. So everybody, it's like watching this is general cybersecurity risk management is typically like, for example, 839 or even 53, it's really focused at the system level. So level, and we call that tier 3. Well, ERM is an approach to be able to look at tier 1 and 2, which is enterprise level. So think executives, the C-suite, to the business impact, which is tier 2, and then down to tier 3. But what I want to talk about is how we can start educating the community and teaching them that ERM and, cyber risk management are not separate. They're not siloed, but instead ERM can be rolled up into an already current and active cybersecurity risk management plan. And on top of it, and I know you're going to love this, Gerald, on top of it, when you do ERM appropriately, you're naturally doing 800-160, which is cybersecurity resiliency, which is preparing your organization for a possible attack instead of hoping that one's never going to happen. Instead, you're looking at it as a way to be able to, I think it's anticipate, withstand, recover, and adapt to an attack because you're looking at it in a holistic way. So I'll pause there, but I'd love to get your guys' take on your thoughts around enterprise risk management and why we don't see more organizations looking at the tier 1 and tier 2 and only siloed and focusing on that tier 3.
Yeah. So my initial thoughts on this, Jax, is the reason that we do see enterprise risk management, but typically at multi-billion-dollar companies only. They, basically have enough money to fund the enterprise risk office where, at smaller, mid-sized businesses, they're going to have maybe a general counsel if they're lucky, who's kind of paired with the CFO for risk because it's seen as like liability, right? Which is, typically financial liability or getting sued, which also maps to financial liability. And you got the lawyers there to kind of handle that. So also, I would argue that enterprise risk is a relatively modern concept, right? Like it sounds like everybody like would be like, oh, I get what enterprise risk is, but the actual discipline of enterprise risk is only recent, like I'd say in the last 10, 15 years. Yeah. And really it's because, and this is the key problem that a lot of organizations have today. They see the verticals of the industry, the marketing, the finance, the lawyers, the sales, right? The EMEA market, the North American market, everything is siloed and bucketed, and you're dealing with the risk to your quote unquote worldview. Whereas enterprise risk is supposed to be at that top tier looking and making their worldview the macro of the whole organization, including the industry and outside external, influences and stuff like that. So that's part of the problem. The second part of the problem, I would argue, even when you have enterprise risk management, and I've seen this firsthand at organizations, even when you have enterprise risk management, unfortunately, there's a downside to it. the business now says, okay, well, that's Jax is the enterprise risk manager for the organization. So Jax has got that. So now it's incumbent upon Jax as the enterprise risk manager to now be the champion for cybersecurity, to be the champion for, reputational damage, or for, dealing with, like, if there's some type of, like, Occupy Wall Street type movement, or Black Lives Matters movement, or some movement that could impact your business or organization either positively or negatively, and handle that risk. So you're almost like outsourcing the idea that everyone owns that risk, when in reality the enterprise risk manager is supposed to be the person who's shepherding and championing it on behalf of the organization. So I think those are kind of the two challenges associated with it. Basically, at the end of the day, executives need to understand that it's more about just making money, and, like, in order to have a successful enterprise. And I think that's why some of the larger companies, not the tech giants, because people just love their product anyways, but some of the, like, the Fortune 50 companies, like your Coca-Cola or Hershey, stuff like that, like, they probably have people in executive leadership positions that understand that risk is a shared responsibility. Eric, any thoughts on enterprise risk?
It's all going to burn up.
I mean, have you seen it in your work, Eric? I mean, you're usually dealing with people who are, their house is on fire and life is horrible, so they'll do anything you say. Like, I need you to put on a dress and go mow the lawn right now. Yep, okay, no problem. We'll go do that. So maybe you're not getting the best perspective of people who are at the executive level and having to deal with risk, but I'd be curious, do you see people accepting, like, the ownership of that risk, or is it like, oh, hey, like, just handle it with the CISO, handle it with the CIO?
So I do see that a lot. So they will have a champion. They'll have someone dedicated for that role. CTO, CIO, whatever the case is, CISSP. But they like, okay, we'll drop this one person in this bucket, and then they have 100 things that they got to take care of, right? Then they get overwhelmed. They don't have enough resources internally that they got to do, or they have to be able to probably do it. And a lot of times when we come in, they're like, we didn't even know about this asset way over here. We didn't know our accounting department was using Box when we pay for OneDrive or Dropbox or whatever the case is. So them being able to understand their threat landscape internally is even a massive hurdle. Even though you got somebody in there doing it, they just can't keep up with it.
Yeah, I think it needs to be simplified. And this is something, again, super passionate about. I even made up my own personal graphic on it to reflect how SP, for example, SP 839 actually overlaps with some of their frameworks, overlap with ERM and how it will only accentuate your current framework that you have. And if it's done correctly, because I'm doing a BIA right now, if it's a business impact analysis, for any of the viewers that don't know what that is, it's a very large document. It can range, it depends on the size of your organization. It could be, a few hundred pages. And it really breaks down by going into tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, depending on what the analysis is about. And it really breaks down all of your assets, your liabilities, and your likelihood of having risk in a very detailed manner. And it really focuses on that CIA triad. And so with this, I think that outside of that additional time, and yes, a little bit more investment, I still think that getting that top leadership, those executives on board, it's going to be critical. Maybe not right now, but we're seeing the increase of ransomware, the emergence of technology, and how the threat landscape is changing on a continuous basis. If the executives don't start taking ownership and we don't start looking at this at a holistic way and getting out of that siloed space, then I think that we're going to see more breaches in the near term. So we've got to figure out a way, how do we communicate this to leadership to get them on board to realize that the lift will be there. It's going to be a little bit more, but I don't think it's going to be that much more that other organizations that are a little bit smaller wouldn't be able to afford this or to do this.
Yeah, one of the famous questions I always ask, sorry to interrupt you there. The one question I always ask when getting brought in on a penetration test or any sort of cybersecurity assessment is, one of the first questions is, what is it about your network that you don't know, understand, or you're freaking worried about?
Yeah.
And that starts uncovering so much
High
stuff.
value assets. Yep,
Yep.
always. Like, where are your high value asset? A lot of times, which is scary. And I realized this during the first part of working with some clients on CMMC, they would ask, well, I don't know if I have CUI data and I don't know where all my data is. How are you going to find it? Like, do you have a tool for that?
Yeah.
And, I
1
mean,
minute. Hold on.
yeah, you're like,
Yeah.
that's
This
a
is a
lot of the smaller
movie.
organizations, but those are the organizations that are going to continuously be more attacked and more targeted for by adversaries. So how do we address this?
Yeah, we actually had one. I won't say the name of the company by any means, but that we had one consultant that was going ready to do some work for a subprime, and they're like, "Well, we just use portals for everything that we do for the Dove Cloud, so we don't think we need to have a Dove Cloud enclave in Azure." I'm like, "No, you're literally accessing CUI. It doesn't matter if you're pulling it down to your workstation or whatever. You need to have your entire infrastructure as Dove Cloud." So like there's business literally has like 4 or 5 different departments doing like 20 different projects. I'm like, you need to pretty much take this project and put it in its own air gapped room, if you will, where only certain people are allowed in and out with a badge and stuff like that. But those are pretty much terminals that go into the Dove Cloud VMs in Azure, and that's the way they work. Like, you got to have this stuff very, very tightly controlled, and they just didn't get it. But I'm like, when you're dealing with the government, it is literally pay to play. You want to play and do work with the government, you're going to have to pay to have your infrastructure in place.
Yeah,
they didn't
you
like
gotta have
that very
enclave.
much.
Well, it costs money. Of course,
Yeah.
they didn't like it.
What is this that you have here, Gerald? I can't see it very well.
Oh, it was just it's just a graphic that I found around enterprise risk management. Like, just a couple of tips, because the NIST one didn't have a lot of good graphics that could show up on screen. But, they're just talking about needing a deep understanding of, like, in order to do enterprise risk management well, right? Deep understanding of the business, obviously, having tools to be able to help you do that, statistical and quantitative abilities, ability to lead and communicate. Again, that kind of gets back to what I was saying, where, you're basically the champion and you've got to lead other people to do things, which, by the way, I will just point out that you don't need to be a cybersecurity professional to be an enterprise risk manager. Like, I've seen enterprise risk managers that came from compliance. I've seen them come from other areas of the business.
That's a good
But
point.
cybersecurity people are typically pretty good, because you typically in cybersecurity need other people to do your things for you, right? You need IT to patch the things. You need end users not to click on silly things. So you get pretty good at talking to the business, at least in GRC, talking to the business about like best practices and like, compromising with them and helping have them do what they need to do, but do it in a secure manner instead of just doing it however they want to. So the ability to effectively communicate is an enterprise risk management skill that's required, and I would argue that you develop that through GRC capabilities. So that's something we've got.
Yeah, we've also run across people who have that role that literally have no idea what ping is, right? So
Yep.
I'm
Not
like,
good.
that's like the same concept. Like, I'm going to instruct a bunch of doctors how to do their job, and all my knowledge is I'm going to take a bandsaw to your head and poke it with a stick. I mean,
You've put band-aids on before.
yeah. Even this morning when I cut my fingers from brisket.
Brisket. Oh my God.
Getting right after it.
Oh,
All right,
dude,
That's
guys.
all I've got for my radar. I love it. I have an idea for the next radar, though. I'd love to
All right.
talk about I'd love to talk about defense in depth and zero trust and some. Yeah, and I know Eric, I have so much, because this kind of ties into like the holistic approach of like getting away from that legacy mindset. And just for viewers, just so everybody knows, zero trust is not new. I actually found this out through my own research. It was back in the 1980s, but we just were not mature enough technology wise and as an industry to be able to adopt it at that time. So we moved into defense in depth, which, as we can see, is not as successful as maybe it was 10 years ago. So I think it would be I think that would be a fun topic.
Yeah, you're always welcome back, Jax, obviously. Guys, I want to share a couple of things with you real quick. So just if you want to know, I mean, obviously we're getting awesome value from Jackson, Eric. I want to start doing this as part of the feed for um, the event. Guys, this is Outpost Gray. So if you like what Jax is talking about, she's all over social media, but this is Jax's YouTube channel. She's obviously got a lot of content on there already. She's live streaming Thursdays at 3:30. So definitely go over to Outpost Gray and check her out. Also, Eric does Barricade Cyber Solutions YouTube channel. Look at Eric with his 7,000 subs. Not bad, Eric. So,
Awesome.
and if you're interested, you can see we're live right now on Barricade. Eric runs the Unnamed podcast show, which is actually later today, if I'm not mistaken, right, Eric?
Yeah, that's one of them. So we've got several different series that we do. The Unnamed podcast is one that we do every other Friday with a bunch of me and my friends that are in the cybersecurity space and MSP space, and we just sit around drinking wine and or beer or whatever, and just talk about all the crap we've seen in the past couple of weeks, and we just tell it how it is. And it's definitely not PG-13. We do give that warning. So, but if you want to have a good time and sit back and laugh and weigh in on what we think, it'd be an awesome conversation.
I love it. So go over to Barricade Cyber Solutions. And if you're not sure, like, here's the thing. It's always been hit subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. That's like what you hear every YouTuber say. Well, Jax, Eric, and myself, we mostly do lots of live streams. So when I say hit bell for notifications, it's not because I'm trying to get the YouTube algorithm. It's literally so you know when we're live, so you can come join us, be in chat, ask the questions, engage with the discussion, network with other people. That's why you should hit the bell for notifications, because there's value for it. It's not value for me for you to hit the bell, it's value for you. So definitely give it a consideration. Again, it's Barricade Cyber Solutions and Outpost Gray. We're going into the weekend in just a few minutes, or at least I am, which I'm super psyched about. So, guys, any other things you guys want to share, projects you're working on, or things for people to be aware of? Eric, you go first. Anything?
Well, like I said earlier, if you have a question about your network that you don't know, understand, or worried about, consult with somebody. Consult with me. Consult with Jax. Consult with Jerry. Find somebody that you resonate with and start asking the questions and get the answers to start securing your business. So you don't have to come talk to me when everything hits the fan and your business is down. Please, I beg people, talk to people first before things go bad.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
Love that.
Check your pride at the door and have questions. Jax, you got any projects or anything you're working on?
Oh my
you wanna share
gosh.
with us?
Yeah, I have so much to say, but I'll say two things. That's it. So the first thing is, if there's any GRC folks out there that are wanting to break into the industry, check out Grant Thornton Positions and Careers. Outpost Gray's in partnership with Grant Thornton, and I'd love to help you get your first job into the industry. So definitely reach out to me on that. And then the other thing is, if there's any NIST lovers out there that'd like to be part of a collaborative paper on enterprise risk management, coupled with a framework of like 839, I'd love for you to reach out to me. I'm looking for a couple of collaborative people to go together with me on this document that I've created. So that's all.
Well, and I'll just point out, that's a really great opportunity. If you're looking for ways to get experience, to have kind of interesting, special things on your resume, be able to answer the question when you're asked in an interview, like, what do you do to stay current? Yeah, we watch the morning daily cyber threat briefing on Simply Cyber, but how about I published a paper in collaboration with Grant Thornton? Like, how's that for like a mic drop, slam dunk? So definitely consider that. And Jax, if you're really want to talk about these Grant Thornton jobs, send me over a link of what they are. If there's enough of them, maybe we could just do a live stream where we go through each job, talk about what it is and how people can apply to it. That'd be a pretty sick live stream.
Love that idea. Brilliant. Thank you for that.
Yep. All right, guys, let me send you all off here. Thank you so much to our panel and to chat. You guys rule, obviously. If you got value out of the show, help a friend out by sharing with them on social media what the radar is, because we do it every Friday and you were here today and you realize that it's got real value. Jax, Eric, and myself, we want to reach as many people as possible and help them and help benefit them with conversations like this. You can go to simplycyber.io/streams to see all the upcoming scheduled live stream events for the Simply Cyber channel. Obviously, go check out Outpost Gray and Barricade Cyber Solutions channels as well, because they have great content coming up as well. All right, everybody, thanks so much and have a great weekend.
Bye, everybody.